Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, which means what? We've almost gotten through another week. Is everybody in a good mood? Yes? Today we are starting the CEBIT Customer Centricity Summit. Is everyone clear what we mean when we say customer centricity? Is everyone clear about that? It means where the customer is in the middle point of all of your discussions, your strategies, your planning. The person who's in the middle is going to be your customer. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Our first segment this morning is going to be talking about designing the customer's journey using AI and how to improve what the customer experiences when he or she comes to your company. How do we do that? How do we ensure that that journey is a good one? And how do we keep repeating those good experiences? Our opening keynote speaker this morning is a woman who has a little bit of experience in doing exactly what I've been talking about. She is the head of engineering at Zalando. Does everyone know what Zalando is, by the way? Yeah, raise your hand if you've heard of the company Zalando. Everybody? All right, so this is going to be easy for her. So let's give a warm round of applause. This is our first speaker of the day to Stacia Carr. Come on out, Stacia. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hello. It is Thursday, right? Brent just shared that with us. And you guys are still awake, or you are awake. Good morning. My name is Stacia Carr, and I'm head of engineering at Zalando. My team is focused on the topic of size and fit. And I'm sure over the last couple of days here at CEBIT, you guys have been talking about artificial intelligence, deep neural networks, the adoption of all of these really important technologies, not just to our businesses, but also to our society. And I'd like to open up our discussion this morning with a provocative question for you, which is, as we adopt these technologies and we have access to massive sets of data, GDPR notwithstanding, what is really the future of a digital experience that is truly customer-centric, where we create meaning for our customers? And the industry pundits have certainly provided us with some interesting predictions. Can I get a quick show of hands in the audience? How many people in this room today are in the middle of a digital transformation strategy? Okay, so I'm thinking at least 60%. And wait, don't put your hand down. Keep your hands up. For those of you working on a digital transformation strategy, for how many of you is AI a core part of that strategy? Yeah, so at least 50%. So the International Data Corporation predicted that by next year, 40% of digital transformation strategies will be powered by AI. So I think we've exceeded that particular prediction. Gartner says that by 2020, 85% of customer relationships will not include human interaction. I find this statement very provocative, depending on how you define a customer relationship. A little bit further out, looking towards 2025, Servian says that 95% of customer interactions will be powered by AI. And I think this is actually quite plausible, if nothing else based on the show of hands that I saw here this morning. So we have to ask ourselves, we're in the middle of this journey. What have we learned? And what do we need to focus on in the future based on what we've learned today? So I can tell you, from the Zalando point of view, we're looking at creating customer experiences for 23 million active customers. For those of you that aren't aware, we're active in 15 countries, and we do revenue of about $4.5 billion, or at least that's what we did last year. So we have a significant opportunity to create really meaningful customer experiences using fantastic technology. And my team is focused on creating customer experiences that all of you are going to identify with. Who's ever had trouble finding the right pair of jeans? Show me your, yeah, everybody in this room. Size and fit is a problem that is prevalent in the fashion industry, period. Certainly in the online retail space, it's a big challenge. And what I'd like to ask all of you to do is consider for a moment that you are part of the Zalando team, and that this is your customer. Looking at the image of this person, what are the very clear data points that this image provides? So ask yourself, and maybe talk to your neighbor, what could you ascertain with a lot of confidence if a customer shared this image of himself with you? And maybe more importantly, what unanswered questions does this image evoke? I put this image in front of a team of data scientists yesterday at Zalando in the Berlin office, and they immediately laughed. They were like, yeah, we can run this through a computer vision algorithm, use image processing, probably detect some body measurements, but what we don't know is why do his jeans appear to fit? You know, it's like an average fit. He's wearing a belt, they're slightly baggy, but you know, we could call this normal. But he's showing his midriff. Is this actually his size and fit preference for an upper body garment? Or is he making a joke? Does he love this really tacky Christmas sweater? Or is he going to a tacky Christmas sweater party? Was this a gift from a relative? Or was this something that he purchased for himself? And the reason I bring this up at the start of our talk today is because I think it's really important to understand that while AI and huge data sets provide us with a lot of insights, they also provide us with a lot of unanswered questions, because human beings and the world around us is quite complex. So to give you a little bit of historical background on where some of the problems my team focuses on came from, let's go back in time and talk about how clothing was made before the advent of industrial manufacturing. If you were a member of the affluent class, you had a tailor who came to your home, took your measurements, probably did a little bit of stitching while the garment was on you, went away, worked on the dress, came back, fit it to you. For most of us, the experience you had was very similar, but it was probably a family member, a grandmother, a mother, a relative who was able to have real-time data exchange between the person creating the garment and the person wearing the garment. And I don't think we think about that era in this context of like real-time data exchange, but that's actually what was happening. And with the advent of mass production, we created a whole bunch of problems that we still live with today. So the first problem was, how do we create an accurate data set to represent the body measurements of a large population? And when you go back and you read the history, you see that the first attempt to do this was done in the United States. The US Department of Agriculture conducted a study to generate measurements to use for pattern gradings, and that's what's up on the image behind me. The first mistake they made was in choosing their subjects. So for women's garments, they chose upper middle class white women, by and large, and took their body measurements. And what they learned after having done this was that the body characteristics and physique of the African American women who were living in the same community were quite different. Garments simply wouldn't fit both people. And the same held true for men. It was a slightly different scenario. It was wartime, so they had access to military, and they were mass-producing uniforms anyway, so they used the body measurements of soldiers for the production of civilian clothing. And you can easily imagine that men that are trained to go into combat probably have a very different body shape than men living a civilian life. These problems haven't really changed that much, and nor has the manufacturing process itself. So this is what a manufacturing plant looked like in the early days, and this is what it looks like today. Not that much change. And what's become even more complex is that garment manufacturers and brands all use different sets of data, and they tweak the data to create different sizing to appeal to a certain customer demographic. So there's no universal size system. Everybody in this room knows that. And this is very confusing to an end consumer. But what we have been able to do, and this is where we start to get into the silver lining and how technology can really be used to address some of these very customer-centric problems, is with the advent of e-commerce, we started to reestablish that real-time feedback loop. So the screens behind me represent a return process. This is a coat that I bought earlier this winter. I'm new to Berlin, so I'm still learning how to dress for seasons, coming from California. I didn't actually return this jacket. It fit me pretty well, but if I wanted to, I could have. I could have initiated an online return process, and through that process, I could have told Zalando, I'm returning this because this item is a little bit too small for me or a little bit too big. And so with the advent of digital technology, we can begin that conversation that used to just happen really naturally between the producer of a garment and the person wearing the item. At Zalando, we really believe that customers need to be able to buy without worrying about whether or not they're going to like an item, and so we offer free returns. And this is one of our key kind of customer satisfaction benefits. It means that on average we have about a 50% return rate, and we believe that this is just part of our business model. Sounds right. You have 300,000 articles in the assortment. You're never sure if that dress is going to actually be what you're looking for. So why not buy it, try it. If you don't like it, send it back. What we would like to avoid is that when you get it home, it looks like this. So the mission of my team is to help customers find what fits the first time. And how do we do this? The team started about 2 years ago. It was a very small group of people that were really familiar with the order process and the return process, and they said to themselves, we have your purchase history, and we have your return data. Based on these sets of information, we should be able to infer what size you wear. And so we started working on an algorithmic size recommendation. We focused on shoes. We thought shoes were easy, right? A lot easier maybe than women's dresses, where you have stylistic differences that factor into how an item's going to fit and how it's going to be worn. This particular product was the very first product that the team launched to help customers find what fits fast. The second product that we released, for those of you that speak German, is called a size flag. This is a piece of size advice that is highly generalized. It tells you whether an article runs a little bit too big or a little bit too small. How do we generate this? We use the same return data that I spoke about earlier that we use for the personalized size recommendation, and we combine it with some fitting data. The fitting data we generate in-house. I have a team that does nothing but try on shoes, dresses, tops all day long. They're trained around how articles are supposed to fit. And they generate a set of data that we can use to get past the cold start problem. So when we haven't sold a lot of a particular pair of shoes because it's brand new, these folks can tell us, hey, we think this runs a little bit small. And I can provide customers very quickly with this piece of size advice. What's been very interesting, and this has been live for a little over a year, what's been very interesting about these two products, looks like I can't go back, the personalized size recommendation and the size flag, is the way that they perform, the impact that they have on our customers. So they both drive really interesting KPIs. But this very generalized piece of size advice, it runs a little big or a little small, actually has more impact on size-related returns than the highly personalized, more sophisticated size recommendation. And so what the team and I have been contemplating for the last few months is why. Why does a slightly less sophisticated and much more general piece of size information actually have more desirable impact than the size recommendation that's targeted just at you? Personalized size recommendation has fabulous impact on KPIs. We see that customers tend to buy more often, so we believe that they're able to buy with a higher degree of confidence, and they tend to buy a little bit more. But in terms of getting the right fit the first time, that really generalized piece of advice is actually more impactful. And so we had to take a big step back. We worked with our user research team, we pulled in some customers, and we started doing some interviews. to really understand what was going on. And what we've learned so far is that actually, in terms of consumers' relationship with Zalando, they actually expect us to know how an article is going to fit generally. It makes sense, right? Zalando has all of the access to all of our merchandise. Why wouldn't we be able to tell them whether an article runs a little bit too big or too small? But the highly personalized size recommendation, that requires a lot more context. That actually requires a relationship. Tell me why you're suggesting that I buy a size 38 and a third Adidas when I usually take a 38. And so what we recognized, a little bit painfully so, is that when we think about creating products for our customers, we can never lose sight of their understanding of who we are and the value that we create for them. When we get overly focused on the sophistication of the tools that we have to work with and the data sets that we have to feed those tools, it's very easy for the customer to get lost. And so today, when we talk about creating this, what I like to call the virtuous cycle of size and fit intelligence, we put our customer experience at the heart of the whole equation. What does this mean? This means that we can never forget who it is that we're building these products for. We need to understand how they think about us, and in order to really be able to provide them with meaningful advice, we develop a relationship, a dialogue, an ongoing conversation with them so that they understand what are the data sets that we're using, how are we using them, and why do we know what we know about them? Because going back to where we started, human beings are complex. And while we can certainly use information to infer meaning, sometimes it's a lot more meaningful to ask a question to confirm what we suspect that we know. And with that, I would actually like to open up for some questions with Brent.
Let's give Stacia a round of applause. That was a great presentation, by the way. That was
Thank
good.
you.
And maybe we could bring that picture back of the Christmas sweater. So did we ever find out exactly what the story was behind?
It's a mystery.
It's a mystery?
It's a mystery.
Because, I mean, I think we've all run into people who've had Christmas sweaters like that before.
Christmas sweaters are a thing.
Or a thing, right? Exactly. From the audience, any questions from you guys about this? Do we have any? Because, I mean, I've got a couple I'd like to ask. I mean, what you're doing in using AI basically in clothing, in this business, are you doing something that hasn't been done already? I mean, obviously, I heard some people saying, well, aren't other companies doing this too already?
Yes. So this is not particularly new. As I said, we've been working on this for the last couple of years. I think what is really important is to understand who's getting it right. And the challenge with fashion is that what you're selling is constantly changing.
Right.
And so being able to create the right data sets to really understand how do you move through that inventory and create meaningful advice as it's changing is a challenge. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, anticipating much larger changes that will occur in fashion over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So I'm really fascinated with the automation of supply chain management mm-hmm. and whole garment manufacturing process and the automation of all of those mechanics. I mean, on-demand customization is it's a reality. It's going to happen. You already see it with the big shoe players, the Nike and the Adidas. And of course, data is at the heart of those value propositions for customers.
Right.
So I think what's important about what I presented today, these are not silver bullets, but they are the beginning of this relationship with customers so that people really understand, oh, you're using this piece of data to tell me this about this article. Oh, now you're going to ask a little bit more, and how are you going to use that, and what's the benefit to me? So that's the journey that we're really on today.
And how will that change the customer's experience? If I'm looking to buy something, give me a tangible example of how my experience is going to be changed based on AI.
So as the Zalando assortment grows, what we want to be able to do is narrow the assortment for you so that you have a highly personalized experience. So you can imagine, I mean, I'm thinking of people in my office who only wear black, my friends from the Nordic countries. They're like, don't show me purple. So being able to have a dialogue with customers to begin to narrow down the articles that we put in front of them, and of course from my side, if you don't like wide-legged pants, I don't ever want to show you those because that's part of your size and fit preference. But we need to build a relationship where customers are willing to give us that information, and then we can show them merchandise according to what their size and fit preferences are.
And what about if your customers don't know themselves?
This is a great question. So we talk a lot about inspiration. So how do we ensure that we don't narrow the assortment so far down that the people that are like, well, I'm not very fashion forward, but I'd like to be.
Yeah.
So I think this is something we have to learn as we go. So how do you have an inspirational quality? And I think that's also the human part. There's human curation. And right now, if you go to Zalando, you'll see on the homepage we have influencer outfits, and those are really valuable to customers. So this blend of artificial intelligence used to help narrow the assortment, but then really recognizing the value of different sources of intelligence, whether it's an influencer or Nike putting content on the platform to help people understand their new line of sportswear.
Yeah.
I think this blend is what you're going to see more and more of.
You also depend on the customer's willingness to share information with you. What happens if you run up with customers, consumers who don't want to share anything about themselves?
This is where the generalized advice is really useful. And what we've learned is, for the most part so far, the size and fit problem is so painful that most people are like, I'll give you whatever you need. Just make it hurt less. But we know this won't be the case for everybody. So these generalized algorithms that leverage kind of the size and fit wisdom of the mass of our customer base can be really useful to those people that either don't want to provide information, or maybe you're traveling and you come to Zalando because you need to buy a new pair of shoes, and you don't have a long purchase history with us, but you can come in and see the Adidas runners run a little bit too small, and then we've been able to help you.
What about saving money for the customer? Let's say if I use your company, and I mean, obviously you've got the loyalty programs if someone comes back, but is there any way to use AI to make the product more affordable for the customer without the customer even realizing it?
This is a good question. It's not really my area of expertise. We have a fabulous pricing and forecasting team that's looking at kind of economics across
But they are
the
looking
platform.
at that.
But yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm really interested in the environmental impact that reducing returns can have, and this is something that's really exciting for me and my team. Is like, if we get you the thing that fits the first time, then we don't have to do this back and forth.
Well, talk to us a little bit about this. Did you say half of the stuff you send out is returned? Did I hear that right?
Yes.
I mean, that's
on average.
Okay,
across
on average.
15 countries.
So that's a huge. Let's ask people. How many people here have ordered something online to wear and you've sent it back because it didn't fit? So a lot of people. I mean, first of all, you're keeping, like DHL and Deutsche Post, you're keeping them in business with that, right? But it's expensive, and a lot of it's unnecessary.
I mean, it depends on how you look at it. I guess from my point of view, it's unnecessary if we could have helped you get it right the first time.
Right.
But there's a fine line there as well. I mean, part of the value proposition that we provide is like, hey, we don't want you to feel uncomfortable making a purchase just because you don't know if you're going to like it or not.
Right.
Obviously, we want to use technology to optimize the experience so that you can operate with a much higher degree of confidence. But when you talk about fashion and ever-changing trends, this is complex. So I think it's going to be an ongoing challenge for us, actually.
Yeah, it's huge. Any questions before we wrap this up? This is your last chance with Stacia. Any questions? Oh, we got one right here. Let's get the microphone.
Hi, Felix. You talked about basically all the data you get from the returns. You also talked about a team that fits on stuff in order. So where's the AI bit in all of this? Yeah, because the first to me seems more like statistics. The second is quite analog in a way. So what's the vision you have on mind?
So the data that I talked about from the fitting models, this is actually what we feed to the algorithm. So we use machine learning right now. We haven't actually moved to an AI model. We will in the next 6 to 12 months. But all of the, yes. So this was the kind of conundrum that my team and I had, was like, how is it that it's not unsophisticated, but it's not as sophisticated, this size flag algorithm. Why is it that this actually has more impact than the more sophisticated size prediction? And what we learned is it has a lot to do with how customers think about clothing. It's really plausible to go into a shop and have somebody say, oh, you're usually a size S, oh, you should take an M because we know this line runs a little bit. And that's why I say, with all the sophisticated technology and data sets, you cannot forget that there is a human interaction, whether it's being facilitated by AI or not, sort of doesn't matter. If you get that wrong, it doesn't matter how accurate the output of your algorithm is. So for us, to answer the second part of your question, what is the vision? We look at use of 3D technologies, so 3D scanning in the fashion space is really a hot topic right now. We have a scanner that will be coming into the office, and we'll start playing with those data sets and seeing what we can learn, what the machine can learn based on 3D data sets of the articles. And then, of course, the big question is around using 3D data sets from customers. And so I get this question a lot. Are people actually ready to provide a 3D body scan? And some people are like, yes, sign me up. The size and fit thing is so painful that I would be willing to give you that data. Yeah. So I think there's a lot on the horizon, but for us, it's really about getting it right each step of the way.
Any more questions? No? All right. Stacia, thank you very much. It was a great presentation. Thank you. Let's give everyone a round of applause. Thank you.